So what I'd like to do, seems that we've already gone through our breathing exercise, I'd invite you to close your eyes just for a moment, if you choose to. And imagine that you have the best of everything you can possibly conceive of. Imagine yourself in the perfect life. All the material assets. You live in a beautiful home, the home of your dreams. Just visualize what it looks like. It's got the best of everything. You walk by the mirror and you look at this striking figure of this Adonis, this beautiful physical specimen, the top of the game. Strong, beautiful, intelligent. Oh, life is good. And you walk through this beautiful, spacious home, and it's so wonderful. And you step into the garage and you see your car. Oh my gosh, you got every kind of car you could possibly imagine. Whatever kind of car, spins your wheels, that's it. Life is good. And so you step out in the back, and you look over the horizon, and you have this amazing realization in that moment that you are the only person on the planet. No one to share this amazing gift of life with. All alone. Go to your heart just for a moment. See how that feels to have that realization that you are alone on this planet. Now open your eyes and just for a moment come to an awareness of how important relationships are in your life. We seldom stop to really contemplate the value and meaning of the relationships in our lives until they're not there. And then all of a sudden they become important to us. And the bottom line is, we came to this planet. That's why there's more than one of us here. That's why in the beginning there was only God, and God said, "Go there and be me." And the only way that God could know itself is to experience itself through individuation of itself, and you and I is it. And so we came here to have relationships to honor the divine mission that we came on, which is to give God the greatest and highest experience of itself by means of itself with itself. Okay, and the bottom line is, how many of you here have relationships in your life? Raise your hand. Everyone. Raise your hand. You can't not have relationships, right? It doesn't matter. Bottom line is, you get up and you look in the mirror, and you're having a relationship right there, right? Now the question is it conscious? Are you conscious of the relationship you have with that being looking back at you in the mirror? And then you think about all the other relationships that you have in your life. I'm not talking just about with your significant other or your children, or I'm talking about the strangers on the street, the people driving on the freeway next to you, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, your neighbors, the people you work with. You can't help but have relationships when you step outside your front door. The minute you get out of bed, you're having a relationship someplace. Can I get a witness for that? Okay, so my point is this. What if we could be so consciously grounded in the awareness of who we are and why we've come here that we allow every relationship in our life to be that place where God shows up as us and us through us? You think that would change the nature of a relationship? Shake it like this. Yes, it would. Yeah. So the bottom line is you can't not have relationships. The bottom line is you're always having them, but the question is, how conscious are you in those relationships? The question is not if will you have relationships, but what is going to be the quality of them and how it relates to who you have come here to be as that divine messenger of the one. Will your relationships be with The people that you encounter through the day. Think about this just for a minute. Are the relationships you have with the people that you encounter through the day? Beginning with yourself in the mirror. And then maybe your spouse or significant other or the people that you encounter through the day as you get in your car, you drive, go to work, go to the market, go to the post office, all these things. How many of those relationships do you engage with at a spiritual level? Think about it. How many of those relationships do you engage with at a mental and emotional level, or are they just perfunctory where you come and go? And how many of them do you have a physical relationship where you actually are with them physically and engage physically with them in doing life in the moment? Think about that just for a minute. I love the definition of relationship that I coined years ago, and I think probably it's original, maybe not. Relationship, a vessel in which two or more people journey toward a common destination. And if you think about it, every relationship in your life is a vessel that you and whoever is in that relationship, whether it's one person or whether it's a spiritual community, this is a vessel here. Where the number of shared relationships moving toward a common destination. What is the common destination of a spiritual community? Well, your vision statement says that. Your mission statement says that. You're here as a spiritual community in a vessel called relationship for a purpose. And that's for spiritual realization, perhaps what you can bring into the world by means of your awareness here, how you take it in the world and become the message. I don't know. That's individually interpreted by each and every one of us. So, I guess the point I want to make is the more aware we are, the more conscious we are in our relationships, the more joy and meaning we will find from them and draw into them in our shared journeys. You have a relationship with the people that you work with. That's a vessel that's going someplace. How conscious are you in that vessel? When you're driving on the freeway, you're actually in relationship with the people in the lanes around you. How conscious are you of that relationship? So I know that's kind of an abstract concept, but if you stay with me, you'll get my point. The more conscious we are with every relationship, the more that we'll honor our purpose for being here, and the greater those relationships, the more enriching they will be to us. How often in our relationships do we focus on what we have in common rather than what we have going on that's different from us? How often do we seek to find common ground with the people we have relationships with rather than looking for what we have that's different? And that's really the point that I want to talk about here. What is the one thing that we have in common? Now, we come from a spiritual grounding here that says there's only God and nothing else. Can I get a witness? So what is it that we have in common in every relationship we have on the planet? A little louder there. Our relationship with the divine, yeah. Our relationship with the one. Bottom line is there's only one of us here, yeah? Okay. So the more conscious that we become of our oneness in our relationships, I know that sounds so airy-fairy sometimes, our oneness in our relationships. The more those relationships will become sacred ground for us that allows us to realize our purpose for being on the planet. Not just with our significant others or our children or our parents, but even the strangers on the street. So I gave you a little chart. I think you should have it. There's 2 charts on there. There's one thing that determines what degree of oneness we'll have in our relationships is that first chart with the circles on it. It's called intimacy. Intimacy. If you notice that the large circle is the external or exterior relationships we might refer to as strangers. We have a relationship with them at one level. Can I agree with that? When you're riding on an airplane, you have some sort of relationship with the person sitting next to you. It's not intimate, right? But you do have a relationship with them. Now, think about the next circle in is coworkers. You probably have a more intimate relationship with coworkers than you do a stranger on an airplane. Yeah? And then the next relationship, the level of intimacy is neighbors and friends. You're more intimate with your neighbors and friends than you are your coworkers in most cases. Okay? And then inside that concentric circle is family members. We're more intimate with our family members probably than we are our neighbors and friends. Would you agree with that? Okay? And then, of course, at the center of that circle is your significant other. But there's even another circle inside that I neglected to put in there. What is that? Yourself. Capital S. What kind of relationship are you having with yourself? Because I can promise you this. The relationship that you're having with yourself will be reflected in every relationship you have in your life. Intimacy. I love my friend Alan Cohen, came up with a great term. He coined intimacy. Intimacy. How deeply will I let you see into me? See? And the closer we are to the hub of the wheel, the more we're likely to allow people to see into us, to see who we are. We share more of ourselves with them. So the degree of intimacy that we feel with others or not is the only thing that separates us. But in truth, can even that separate us? That's a question. Shake your head like this. No. Intimacy is the vehicle that we invented that allows us to experience degrees of separation with human beings. So the closer that you feel, the closer that I feel, the more of me, the closer to you I feel, the more of me I'm going to let you in to see. Does that make sense to you? That's human nature, isn't it? Yeah. So the question is, how do we navigate that terrain that allows us to integrate intimacy at the appropriate level in every relationship that we have that allows us to honor the divinity of our being, who we came here to be, express, and manifest? And the second chart you have there is the 5 aspects, or that I would call sacred practices, that are applicable to every relationship that we have. And another guided visualization. Close your eyes just for a minute, if you choose to. Now imagine there's a knock on the door. And you go to the door and you open it, and there stands Jesus, or Buddha, or Mother Teresa, or Gandhi, or any human individual that you would think of as divine. You can open your eyes. Now the question I have for you is, how would you treat that individual who knocked on the door? How would you treat them? Would you treat them with respect and reverence, and invite them in and give them something to drink, and to, have the openness to let them into your life? Would you? That's a question. Sure you would. We all would, wouldn't we? We'd be a fool to have a sacred being knock on our door and slam the door in their face. Well, the first aspect, the first practice of developing to rejuvenate our awareness of our oneness is reverence and respect. Reverence and respect. What does reverence and respect mean? When we stand toe-to-toe with someone else and we enter the consciousness of reverence and respect. Reverence is to see past the shell. Rather than looking at Evelyn, I look into her. Big difference there. And so when I look into her and I recognize, and you said namaste at the beginning of your service today, there's a place within me that the divine lives. And when I'm aware of that presence within me and I'm aware of it within you, we're one. That's reverence. That's practicing reverence. Now, the question is there any human being on the planet that you can't hold reverence for? If they're alive. Shake your head like this. No. Now, let's define what's the difference between reverence and respect. Because we get those confused all the time. You don't have to earn reverence from me. If you're living in a human skin, or you're a living creature, you have my recognition of reverence. But you do have to earn my respect. So don't mistake the two. Here's a good example. In California, we had rattlesnakes. And people also had guns. I have respect for a gun because I know what it can do. And I have respect for a rattlesnake because I know what it can do. But I don't hold reverence for the gun. I hold reverence for the snake. Why? Because at some level, it is the living incarnation, the life force of the divine. You see the difference between the two? So in your daily life, there's experiences with people that we may not respect, but that does not mean we have to compromise our spiritual integrity by not holding reverence for them. Take a breath, because I know there's people on this planet that it's hard to see the divinity within them. Yeah, I see God in my beautiful spouse or my children or my neighbor, but not that person over there because he or she's not acting or behaving the way I think they should. That's respect, not reverence. So the first practice, if you want to rejuvenate and heal the relationships in your life, every one of them, ask yourself, in this relationship, am I willing and am I able to stand with reverence with this person? To see past the illusions, past their behavior, past what it appears that by the senses I don't like, and honor the divinity within them. That's the first step to relationships that matter, that are healed and functional. The second practice is communication. In every healthy relationship, you notice there's communication. Communication is a two-way street, isn't it? What does it require? Well, what is communication, though? It's speaking, but it's also listening. And many of us are very good at this, speaking. And most of us are not too good at listening, because when we're engaged in a conversation with somebody and they're speaking, or even if we're speaking, where's our mind? We're not really listening to the conversation. We're thinking about what we're going to say next. Is it just me? Am I alone in that? Okay. So one of the things that I've discovered in creating healthy relationships in my life at every level, from significant other to strangers on the street, is learning how, and as a minister, I had a chance to do this in spades many, many times. I had to work at making this, creating a safe place to hear and to be heard. And what was it? Covey said, seek first to understand before to be understood. And how often in our relationships, when we're communicating, do we take a breath to really hear what is being said and bring it into consciousness and be with it before we react to it? Okay? There's my wife Diane and I have a great practice. We really, these 5 things we try to practice. And there are times when certain issues might arise in our relationship where there could be conflict. We know that. What we do is before I or she says what's on our mind, we give this signal. Can we talk? That means the next words that come out of my mouth are really important to me. So I need you to hear them, to pay attention, to pay attention. One of the practices, how many of you have read Michael Singer's book, The Untethered Soul? Isn't it a great book? It's a great book. He teaches this process of stepping outside of your conscious mind and being the witness to what's going on in your mind and how it reacts to what's going on in the world around you. When we can become the silent witness to the conversations that we're having with other people, we will invoke a greater, higher conscious awareness of reverence in those conversations. Okay? When you can witness, step outside of your thoughts and your actions and your words and witness it from the silent witness, and just don't judge it. Just observe. Be the observer of what comes out of your mouth, and you'll be amazed at how communication can be enhanced with reverence, speaking kindly, speaking with compassion. The third practice that I would encourage you, if you really want to find balance in every relationship in your life, integrity and honesty. Some of us have a hard time with both of those. I love the root word. The word integrity comes from the root word, Latin word integer or integre. It means to integrate, to bring all the parts together to the whole. So when we live our lives in our relationships with integrity, we're bringing the highest and best of ourselves into every aspect of our relationships, not just to certain people, but every person. Integrity is the inner action of knowing that who we are, what we do with who we are, and how we conduct who we are is the same whether we're in a crowd of people or we're alone in our bedroom. We're the same person. Do you get that? And how many of us? There's a great story. There's a great story of a master takes his students into the village one night, and he tells his students, "I'm poor. I have no money. What I want you to do is go into the village and go through the side streets. And when you see a person walking down a side street where no one will see you, pull that person into the shadows and take their money and bring me their money, but do them no harm." And all the students, except one, agreed to do that. And the one student said, "Master, I can't do that." And the master said, "Why not?" He said, "There's no place where myself isn't watching." And of course the master celebrated and said, one of us gets it. And they all lived happily ever after. But the point is that integrity allows us to become the witness, not just to our words, but our actions as well. Honesty is how we conduct ourselves in the outer world. Integrity is the inner journey. Honesty is how it manifests in our world around us. I talk a lot about that in my book, Your Redefining Moments. The fourth practice that you can employ to bring balance, to re-energize the relationships in your life. I don't know if you've had relationships in your life that kind of went sour or stale, and they just kind of, you exist with these people rather than really feel engaged with them. It could be your significant other or a family member. It could be a neighbor. You know, it could be at any level of relationship we're talking about in those concentric circles. Okay, loving kindness. Buddha taught that. It's coupled with compassion, treating everyone with equal compassion. How often do we rush to judgment and then build a case around what we perceive that supports our case about how other people's behavior and how they show up in the world around us? Loving kindness and compassion. The great little story. I'll move through this quickly, but it makes the point. Once a school of fish were swimming along the bottom of the ocean, and they see this one fish up on the top of the surface, jumping in and out and springing and doing hand flips. He's just jumping wildly. And one of the fish in the school look up and says, "Look at that fool. He's always showing off. He's such an idiot. I can't stand him. What a arrogant person he is." And of course, what the school of fish didn't see was the fish that was jumping around was thrashing and fighting the fisherman's hook and line that was reeling him in. The point being, we never know what's going on in somebody else's life, the pain they may be going through. And we rush to judgment because they're not behaving the way we think they should. Look around the relationships in your life and you'll see where that is the case. Whether it's somebody in your family. Sometimes we treat strangers better than we treat our family when it comes to compassion and loving kindness. Take a deep breath. It's very quiet in here. Treating everyone with equal compassion. Easy to do. Again, it's easy to do with people we like, yeah? Not so easy to do with people that we don't like. And it's okay not to like people. There's nothing wrong with that. It goes back to reverence and respect. You don't have to respect everybody. But when you can clarify the difference between compassion and judgment, you'll be there. Which is the fifth practice, non-judgment. Learning how to stand with equanimity in every relationship that we have. Giving people the freedom to be who they are. Think about that. I'm just have a parade of people going through my mind right now that I is tempting to want to tell them to behave differently than they are. And I've been told by enough other people to behave differently than I've been behaving in the moment. But non-judgment allows us to stand back and give that person rein to be who they are without our labeling it right or wrong. The practice is equanimity. This comes from Buddhism. Equanimity is the ability to stand with something, with somebody or anything, and judge, or not judge, but to discern whether we are being pulled toward it favorably or pushed away from it disfavorably. So when we stand with equanimity, we rise above our judgmental mind and we enter into discernment. And discernment, the difference between judgment and discernment is quite obvious. Judgment always has emotion and opinion behind it. Discernment is an observation. I see. Different than judgment, where we rush to conclusions and we label it, and our emotion. You'll know if you're judging because your emotions will be engaged with it. But if you're discerning with equanimity, you're able to stand with whatever's going on in these relationships and take a breath and not be sucked into it, whether it's a feeling you're triggered by anger or resentment or even favorable things. It's really powerful to be able to stand with equanimity in our relationships and observe them rather than judge them. When you do that, you'll discover that the process of living in a human skin and allowing others to live in their human skin and to coexist with them in a way that honors your purpose for being on the planet and theirs, you'll discover a life worth living. So, all 5 of these practices begin first and foremost with what we talked about at the beginning. The relationship that you're having with yourself. How kind are you to yourself? You know? I mean, do you have reverence for yourself? The next time you go on a food frenzy, stop and ask yourself, is what I'm putting in my body a reverent act? Is it honoring this temple I live in? Or is it not? And just don't judge it, just observe it, and maybe you'll be guided to do something differently. Communication with yourself. How often do you talk to yourself and you find yourself talking down rather than up? I see 2 people going like this. Yeah. Listen to the self-talk that you're having. Become the observer of it. And if you find yourself talking down to yourself, looking for faults with yourself rather than what's right, stop. Take a breath and say, wait a minute. Where do I come from? Who am I? Oh, I am an individuation of the one. What's not to love about that? It's just the way it is. Integrity and honesty with ourselves. My goodness. We can fool other people, can't we? But we cannot fool ourselves. We know when we're not living up to the deepest aspects of our own truth. And you know what? You can run, but you cannot hide from yourself. And it's never too late to take a breath and live up rather than down. Loving kindness. It's so corny. Back in the 70s, Louise Hay, the things you look in the mirror and say, I love myself just the way I am. She was onto something. It felt corny to a lot of people at the time. But loving kindness is and having compassion for yourself is to be able to forgive yourself when you're not showing up the highest and best you can. And make a commitment to do better, rather than judge yourself or beat yourself up. Anybody else in here good at beating yourself up? Man, I had a black belt in self-abuse for a long time. But I learned to get past that. Non-judgment. Stop judging yourself. I could go on forever about that one. I'm a Virgo. It's really easy for me to get into when things get out of alignment with perfection. I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I'll admit it. Okay, and I guess where I want to go with all this is that when we can become grounded in the awareness that we are an individuation of God, and I really mean that. Don't just let that slide off your back like water off a duck. Let it sink in that you are a divine representative of the One. And that every relationship in your life, from the one you have in the mirror to the most distant stranger on the street or beyond, you have the opportunity to honor God. I just came back from a trip to Europe, having the honor of having meals with people from South Africa and Dublin and all over the world, and seeing the diversity and even opinions that are challenging. But to transcend all of that and realize, you know what, man, we all come from the same place. And when we're done here, we're all going to go back to that place. So what we do between the time we get here and the time we leave matters. And relationships are at the core of that. That's my message to you today. You are that vibration that sends out that vibration to a concentric circle that grows. From your intimate others to your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, strangers on the street. Be the divine emissary of the One with these 5 practices and watch what happens. Your relationships will be transformed. I promise you that. We end with a song now. Bob's going to come up. There's another song that I wrote years ago called The Circle Grows Larger.